Good evening. This is Maestro Cretella with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today, we have a 1v1 on Fedrid Folly. Our first player is Soul Drinkers. Soul Drinkers is playing as the Plague Champion. This is a Chaos ranged hero. Starts out with a bolter that does damage over time. You can switch those out for melee weapons, which are very good for counter initiation, and he can actually become rather tanky. He can also heal, repair, and build turrets. His opponent is RedRolla. Sounds more like an orc name than a Space Marine name. And he is playing as the Techmarine. Kind of like the Plague Champion's counterpart in a weird and unexpected way. He also starts out in ranged. He can also build turrets and repair, although he doesn't really do healing aside from, I guess, the healing of his relay beacon. And he's got a variety of different guns and only one melee weapon. Alright, so recently there definitely have been a few people who have been saying that they want to see more 1v1 replays, and lately I really have been doing way more just team replays with very few 1v1 replays. Part of the issue there is just the fact that there really aren't that many 1v1 replays to go around. So, well, if you want 1v1 replays, you gotta make them. I was able to find this one on Game Replays uploaded by Soul Drinkers. Soul Drinkers is a very good player. RedRolla I am not familiar with, but we'll see how things go in this game. Anyway, RedRolla, unfortunately in that case, letting the heretics get a little too close to its attacks, and he's pretty much just in full retreat in response to the approach of those heretics along with the Plague Champion. He hasn't yet invested in any kind of melee counter war gear, such as shotguns, so he's going to have to rely a lot just on positioning and kiting and focus firing. Normally, the Techmarine is actually a hero who can actually do pretty well against melee units even without an actual melee counter unit or war gear, just because there is so much range firepower out on the field right now between two scouts, one tac, and the Techmarine, that they should be able to do so much damage on approach that melee units, and especially one as squishy as heretics, would have a lot of trouble getting into melee without losing most of their models, if not the squad. Anyway, this melee engagement actually, despite the retreat from Soul Drinkers there on his Chaos Space Marines, that actually turned out to more or less be a win in his favor, since he managed to take out a TAC model without losing a single CSM model. So, good judgment by him, left his Chaos Space Marines in there just long enough to take a TAC model without actually losing a CSM model. So he won't lose any, he doesn't have to replace any requisition, and even if he had lost one model, TAC models are more expensive than CSM models. Anyway, we see Soul Drinkers going for a fairly typical Chaos build, although this tends to be more of a Sorcerer build than a Plague Champion build. Although, I mean, most builds are pretty flexible across heroes. I think more often you will see Plague Champion players actually get double Chaos Space Marines, and less often the double Heretics. I don't think the Plague Champion benefits from the double Heretic build quite as much as the other Chaos heroes, although it's still definitely a usable and viable build. And, well, just a squad of 2 Heretics, 1 Chaos Space Marine, and the Havoc is actually a very common Chaos build, period. And it offers a lot of flexibility, giving you control from the Havoc, some range firepower from the Chaos Space Marines, as well as melee, both melee counter initiation as well as melee initiation with the Heretics. Anyway, we now have an Aspiring Champion on one of the Heretic squads, which is a good choice for having them deal with Assault Marines. Assault Marines jumping into Aspiring Champions, I feel, is not the right choice, however, and we have some Plague Champion support right here. I mean, the Assault Marines do have support from the Tactical Marines, and they will do a lot of range damage, but I think there's just greater risk of losing an Assault Marine model, and that being a bigger loss than losing a few Heretic models. Since Assault Marine models are pretty expensive, those individual Heretic models are expected to die, but they are very, very cheap at only 13 requisition per model. So Techmarine here has a good position in cover. The Chaos Space Marines should actually force melee rather than just duke it out in a ranged fight with the Techmarine. They will win much more significantly in there with much reduced risk of losing models. Anyway, Havoc now sets up, and the Assault Marines are actually nowhere to be seen, or they are to be seen coming out of base with only partial health. So with the Havoc out on the field, RedRolla is going to be relying a lot on the Assault Space Marines to deal with the Havoc, jump on it, force it off. Havoc is now a little bit more resistant to getting jumped, only because it has melee resistance. And this is not going to really... This mainly makes it so that it's less likely to die entirely and also less likely to lose models, but it still definitely gets hard countered by the Assault Marines. Meanwhile, we do have, he's keeping the Heretics out on the field as a way of counter-initiating against the Assault Marines. The Assault Marine jumps right now from RedRolla have not been that good, and the result is that he's very quickly retreating, and in that case, he did lose a model. So this particular engagement not going very well for RedRolla, and he's choosing to invest in snipers rather than shotguns. Now, I mean, the Plague Champion is traditionally very, very weak against snipers, so it's not an entirely surprising decision. But it just means in that particular situation, or in any situation where the Heretics are actually charging forward, he won't really be able to control the Heretics nearly as well as if he had shotguns, because he will be having... his scouts are now less mobile. They won't be able to use a shotgun blast to halt the Heretics on approach. So it might do for Soul Drinkers, who nearly lost his Plague Champion, to use his Heretics a little bit more aggressively. Although he still definitely needs... he's using this one for counter-initiation. Right now, this one, with only 3 models, he's using that pretty much just for map control. So he really only has 1 on combat duty and 1 on map control duty, and he's leaving this one with not all of its models reinforced. Now, the advantage of this is that he can save on both the requisition for reinforcing the Heretics as well as the upkeep. So he's saving some money. The increased risk right here is that if he's not careful, he can lose the squad. One of those 3 models just got sniped, and now this squad is nearly going to die. If he does not press the retreat button, he will lose the squad, and I think he will. He managed it just in time, and like a split second longer, and he would have lost that entire Heretic squad. And I do think he wants to keep that Heretic squad alive, even if he doesn't want to replace all of the models. Anyway, we do have a Devastator out for RedRolla, but we also have a Blood Crusher out for Soul Drinkers. This is going to work out pretty well for Soul Drinkers at the moment. If we notice, RedRolla is not in Tier 2. He has the resources to go to Tier 2, but he's not in Tier 2, so he's well behind in tech. Now, there are several reasons why he's well behind in tech. There haven't really been much in terms of generator bashes, but the obvious reason that he's behind in tech is that he got a 5th squad in Tier 1. He bought Devastator Marines, and even though Devastators are actually pretty cheap, that's buying an additional squad, and it's delaying your tech. I think he would have been at a tech disadvantage even without the Devastator purchase, since I think he had a more expensive Tier 1 build as well, since he got Assault Marines, whereas Soul Drinkers got Havocs. And Havocs are quite a bit cheaper than Assault Marines, and although I didn't see it, that may have also meant that Soul Drinkers was able to put down his generators earlier. Since generally when Space Marine players get Assault Marines, they usually only drop a node, and then they wait until after getting Assault Marines to get the generator. So right now this Blood Crusher is completely uncontested. And Soul Drinker still has time because RedRolla is still not to Tier 2. Soul Drinkers doesn't know that exactly. When you have... Of course, it's so easy to tell when you're watching a replay, and you can tell exactly how much time a person has with their tech advantage. Let's see if RedRolla already has... Yeah, he's already got some anti-vehicle weapons building, getting a missile launcher on his Tactical Marine as well as the Meltagun on the Techmarine. And one of the things that Soul Drinkers needs to be very careful about is that even though he had a very, very clear tech advantage, he's playing against Space Marines, which are a very, very strong race for transitional AV. We have the missile launcher TAC, and even though it is an expensive option, especially for its performance, it is just very, very good in that emergency AV role when you just need AV and you don't have, and you just need it soon. You need it fast. You need it on a unit you already have instead of getting out an entirely new unit. The same applies for pretty much any commander type AV, but of course commanders are going to vary based on what commander you actually have, whereas tax, of course, exists regardless of what commander you choose. And Space Marines in general, between the Force Commander and the Techmarine, are very, very good at handling transitional AV. The Apothecary less so because he does not himself have an AV weapon. And of course the Techmarine also has, ooh, very, very nice baited Merciless Strike. He approached with the Heretics and then moved back away, baited out the Merciless Strike so that the Merciless Strike completely whiffed and didn't do any damage to the Heretics. Heretics, meanwhile, still in a lot of trouble, down just to the Aspiring Champion, and to be honest, I think this Blood Crusher is now overextended, and it's going to die. So, rather unfortunate play by Soul Drinkers right there, moving in the Blood Crusher that fast and that far ahead. If anything, in that particular engagement, I think it was a mistake for him to worship. Now, of course, he worshipped to get the regeneration, the health regeneration for his demon, but I think he would have been better off having the Heretics approach and tie up the Techmarine. With their damage, they probably would have forced off the Techmarine pretty quickly, or at the very least bought enough time for the Blood Crusher. The missile attacks were not part of that engagement yet. That would have given the Blood Crusher more room to work and forced off the Techmarine a little bit sooner. Now, I was going to say, before I commentated on things that were happening in that engagement, the Techmarine can also get the Orbs of the Omnissiah. Right now, he doesn't need them, but that's just still an AV option that he has. And it tends to be a very powerful one, since it is an AV grenade that snares and I believe also disables weapons. Now he's getting the Signum Armor, and I was wondering if he was going to get the Bionics, because there were several times when the Heretics either approached the Techmarine or they could have approached the Techmarine, and the Techmarine wouldn't have much to do about that. If he had gotten Bionics, he really would have been able to shut down Heretics. He could even aggressively charge Heretics, and that would significantly reduce the effectiveness that Heretics have in this game. Instead, he goes for the Signum Armor. Now, one of the reasons to get the Signum Armor is that it compensates for one of the weaknesses of the Meltagun that he bought. The Meltagun's weakness is that it has short range, and the Signum Armor will passively increase the range of the Techmarine. So the range will be a little bit more reasonable on the Meltagun. But the real reason, of course, to get the Signum Armor is to get the Mark Target ability, a very, very powerful ability, makes any targeted unit take more damage. We have some Chaos Space Marines right here with no mark, suffering quite a bit from sniper fire. They have an Aspiring Champion, but they do not have a mark. Now, because they do not have a mark, they now have the Slaughter ability, which increases their damage by 20% when it's active. However, a mark upgrade might still work out better for him. He is playing against a power armor race, so he could probably use the increased damage of a Zinch Bolter for dealing with the Tactical Marines as well as the Assault Marines. Additionally, the Plague Champion's going to go down here. But additionally, well, I don't remember what additionally, but I guess the only reason, maybe he plans to get Corn Marines, so we'll see. I think he's going to lose another model here. But meanwhile, Soul Drinkers is at such a tech advantage that he actually has a Chaos Predator out on the field. So he actually really had a massive tech advantage, and he was even able to get a little bit of a Generator Bash over here against RedRolla. Now again, the Techmarine is a very, very strong hero for dealing with vehicles, so he should be able to manage a way to deal with this Predator. The Devastators, they are upgrading to a las cannon, so I was wondering if you were going to see that. And we also have a second TAC squad purchase, which is, I think, a little curious, but it can definitely work out. He has a plasma gun on that, which I actually feel is not entirely warranted. There's only really one major power armor threat out on the field, and that's the Chaos Space Marines, and I feel like they're actually slightly underpowered without a mark against Space Marines. Other than that, if anything, I would say the Chaos Space Marines should be pretty adequately countered by the Assault Marines. So I think the tac purchase with a plasma gun, late tac purchase with a plasma gun is a curious choice. I don't think it's going to like sink him, but I think there are better choices he could have made. I guess the good thing about this is that he's getting a durable range squad out on the field. It is a rec heavy purchase, but it's pretty cheap on power rather, in the context of tier 2 and going into the late game. And maybe he actually did want to conserve power. So double sniper scouts over here did some work on those heretics, which Soul Drinkers is really using these heretics pretty much just as a dedicated capping unit without even reinforcing all of the models. Now, one of the things that's working well about what Soul Drinkers is doing, he knows that there are 2 squads of sniper scouts here, so he moved the Predator over to this side, whereas all of the AV units are over here. The Missile TAC, the Assault Marines, as well as the Devastator Marines, so they're really not set up in a position to respond to this Chaos Predator. Chaos Predator, now if anything, has the flank behind these units, and we're going to see the Chosen Plague Marines get in against the TAC, so overall, much stronger map awareness and just choice of engagements and unit positioning from Soul Drinkers in that particular engagement. Now, the Assault Marines did pursue the Predator, and they actually got a Melt-A-Bomb, and wow, I'm actually surprised that lasted long enough for the Techmarine to come out of there and actually finish off the Predator. That was very surprising, but RedRolla made that work. I really thought the Melt-A-Bomb was going to wear off, and the Predator was going to be able to move that out of there before the Techmarine was ever going to get there, but I was totally wrong. And pretty much up until he lost that Predator, that was an overall win for Soul Drinkers in terms of engagement. Anyway, meanwhile, the Assault Marine use has been a little hit or miss for RedRolla. I don't like, where are the Assault Marines right now must be in base because they're still regenerating hit points. I feel like they haven't been here often enough disrupting the Havocs, and I'm frequently seeing the TACs getting suppressed by the Havocs. Now, he does of course have to worry about the Heretics, now the Chosen Plague Marines, as well as a Plague Champion who just upgraded to the Plague Fist. So, actually, his Assault Marines are going to be pretty well countered, so it's actually a pretty good choice that he's getting a Dreadnought at this point. Now, the Dreadnought, I think, would normally be a risky purchase considering he knows Soul Drinkers is in Tier 3, but I think it's really going to work out pretty well with Soul Drinkers' current composition. Soul Drinkers, most of his AV, well, actually his only real AV is the Plague Champion, and the Plague Champion is not going to be able to stand up to a Dreadnought, nor are the Chosen Plague Marines. So Soul Drinkers has invested a lot in melee counters, and now we have a Dreadnought coming out on the field, which is actually going to counter most of those melee counters. Anyway, Assault Marines finally jump in, but they jump in when they have so little health. This is a terrible decision, unfortunately. He's definitely going to lose at least one model. He's going to be lucky to make it out of there with 2 models, and possibly not the squad. Very close call, but he does lose the squad. So yeah, he really did pay for that. That unfortunately was just not a good jump. So Soul Drinkers now looking very strong. We do have the Dreadnought out on the field, and right now compositionally the Dreadnought is still uncountered. But part of what RedRolla needs to do is he needs to move around and start capturing. He's moving the Las Cannon Devastator, which is actually the right choice. The Las Cannon Devastator is the unit right now that's going to contribute the least to combat, so that does mean it should be the first unit to be on capping duty. The Scouts, of course, traditionally the capping unit, but with their sniper rifles, they're going to be contributing a lot more than the Las Cannon Devastator. Oh, Plague Champion taken out with a sync kill. Very nice. I was going to say, though, now we do have some more vehicle counters for that Dreadnought. Unfortunately, RedRolla not paying attention to his Techmarine and loses the Techmarine. That was a very unnecessary Techmarine loss. Right now, Blessing of the Omnissiah is active, giving the Techmarine repairs, and he needs to go straight to that Havoc, because that's really the only unit that's going to threaten it. I mean, technically the the Chosen Plague Marines can do damage. If anything, I think he should have kept that up. Stayed there, kept beating apart the Chaos Havocs, because he would have bled their models, forced a retreat from them, and then it would have still been relatively uncountered against the Chosen Plague Marines. So we at least have a 1-to-1 cap, but we still have a significant VP lead in favor of Soul Drinkers, 308 to 158. But unfortunately, Soul Drinkers has just paid for his risky tactic of running around the second squad of Heretics with only just a few models. He lost them. I didn't actually see it, but they just went down. And even though that was a squad of Heretics that only had 3 or 4 models, he didn't invest that much into them. He didn't get an Aspiring Champion. It's still quite a big of a loss, because that was giving him map control, and right now he really does not have the map control that he had before. He just doesn't have the extra unit. He needs this Heretic for combat. He's been using it for combat every single time, using it for worship, using it for counter initiation. He absolutely needs it. Chaos Space Marines right here. They do. Ooh. This is unfortunately not that. So he used Touch of Nurgle, hoping that would have saved him that engagement, but unfortunately, really just not a good choice. The Dreadnought really didn't care about that, and that ended up being a wasted Touch of Nurgle, as well as 3 models lost on the Chaos Space Marine. So that really did not go in his favor. We see an Orb of the Omnissiah going in on the Heretics and the Plague Champion, which was rather curious. Now, I believe it will drain energy. Yes, it will, or burn energy. There's a difference between drain and burn. Drain meaning that it would go back to the unit. If it was draining energy, that means the Techmarine would get energy. Burning energy meaning it's just getting rid of the energy from that unit. So the Plague Champion did lose energy from that Orb of the Omnissiah, but that still wasn't really worth it. Those orbs really need to be reserved for this Predator. And he needs to try to get a snare with the las cannon and then move in with the Techmarine to get an Orb of the Omnissiah off. It's unfortunate that he lost his Assault Marines, because that would actually be an easier combo to pull off. Anyway, I like the marked target on the Heretics. Now he needs to shoot them apart, so those Heretics are in trouble, but he should have also moved back a little bit more with the Tactical Marines. These Tacs have Sergeants, so they must... I feel like they've been taking a lot of damage, so I feel like, and They Shall Know No Fear must be charged on one or both of them, unless I'm wrong, which I really don't know. I could be. But if he has Sergeants, he should be charging that ability, and he should be using it. It's a great ability for letting Tacs actually last or even win melee fights when they otherwise would not be able to, since they will take reduced damage, they will do special attacks. Even the Bolter models will do special attacks. So RedRolla, I don't know RedRolla, but he's proving to be a competitor right here. Has to be careful with the Devastator Marines getting way too close to a dedicated melee unit, however, and he needs some kind of other unit to deal with these Chosen Plague Marines. Now, of course, they are very tough. They have infantry armor and a lot of health per model. If anything, I think the Dreadnought is out of position and should be trying to deal with the Chosen Plague Marines rather than all of the stuff up here. Good, and I like how he's now drawing the Predator into a las cannon firing arc. This is actually very, very smart by RedRolla. He's going to take out the Predator. All right, well played. I think he knew what he was doing there, and he actually takes out the Predator. So that was actually very, very well played right there. And although I felt the Dreadnought should have been counter-initiating against the Chosen Plague Marines, he made a really, really smart play there. Normally, a Predator is going to beat a Walker, in part because the Predator can pursue, and because it has a ranged weapon. Here, he baited the Predator into a Devastator firing arc because he knew that a Predator would pursue. So the Predator pursued, it went into a las cannon firing arc, it only had about half of its hit points, and then the Dreadnought could even go back in to help finish it off. So you know what, the late game Dreadnought play from some of his parts of his play haven't been very strong. His Assault Marine play was not very strong at all, but his Dreadnought play has been very, very strong right now. He's keeping it alive in the late game against a Tier 3 opponent. He's had to deal with 2 Predators, so overall he's doing very well. And the Predator, the Dreadnought's responsibility also in part needs to be to counter melee. Wow, this... Alright, I thought that Heretic Squad might go down. It might still go down. And it does. Wow. So RedRolla is actually doing very, very well right now, except for one factor, which is he's losing significantly on the VPs, 298 to 45, and it's a double cap against him. So he really needs to put something on a point. And man. And he's actually about to lose the VPs, so I mean, to be honest, at this point it looks like he might not be winning this game, even though combat-wise he's doing just fine at the moment. But it's about to be a 2-0 cap against him. I think he's going to lose this game right here, and he's actually conceding a GG, which is a little sad. He actually did really well in these last few engagements with combat, but of course the victory point war is actually what determines the game. Have triumphed. I was going to say the wrong thing. Alright, so there's a 1v1 game. VP's very uneven, but the actual fighting was very good. So, hope you enjoyed it. Have a good night.